Hello, I am Arion. This is Book Zealots, and I'm doing something a little bit different because so many booktubers have been posting their 10 hardest books or 5 hardest books, whatever their list is. And I thought it's very subjective because everybody's hardest books is going to be different. And some of them I'd never even heard of, so obviously I'm thinking, yeah, that's probably a hard book. Probably something like that might be hard. I've never read that. I haven't tried to read that. And yet the lists of, for instance, if you just search it online, it's the same books are regurgitated. And I thought a lot of those books aren't even hard. Why are they considered hard? Is it just because they're big? More than 400 pages, more than 600 pages. What is it about the books that people think that certain books are hard? And it sent me down a rabbit hole. So, because of this, I wanted to know what it was about these hard books. It took me down a rabbit hole of looking up the language, names, the length, the amount of effort, time, energy it would take to read some of these books. Then it took me down a rabbit hole of how I used to do reading for Prometheus because he was homeschooled. And when we would start the year, in the middle of the year, at the end of the year, I would test his reading level. And I will get into that. And then I also started down a rabbit hole of where our schools are at. And I tried to have a conversation with somebody online, and he really wasn't receptive to the conversation about how our students are suffering in the education system because they are not being taught. And it is nationwide. It is a crisis. It needs to be discussed, and there aren't a lot of people even aware of it. So we have students that aren't proficient in reading, writing, or math skills, your fundamental basics at their level, at their grade level. So if you have a 4th grader, they're not testing proficient in their grade. So we have students that are graduating, please tell me how that's even possible, that cannot read. So I will be looking down and reading my notes. I apologize. I do not have a teleprompter. Okay, so I do want to talk about the lists. I do want to talk about the Lexile levels of these challenging books. I do want to talk about adult reading level. I do want to talk about illiteracy. I do want to talk about the popular books and what level they might be at. And then I have subtopics, and I will try and make this as condensed as possible because it's probably going to be on the longer side. I hope you are interested in this. It's information that definitely needs to be known, especially if you have children. The first thing is, for adults, what do you consider a challenging book, and why do you consider it a challenging book? Oh, I did look up. Okay, so for some of these difficult books that were overlapping on these different lists, are these books challenging because of the foreign names? So for instance, Dostoevsky, oh, he's over there, you can't see him. So Dostoevsky or Tolstoy, are those books considered hard because of the foreign names? Or if you took Charlotte Bronte, are her books challenging because she has a lot of French in some of her books and it isn't translated? And I guess back then, more people, especially in England, knew French. I don't speak French. I don't like that it isn't translated. Am I anal and will I go translate it? Yes, I will. Why do people feel the need to read someone else's list? There were a lot of booktubers that did say that these are my challenging books. You don't have to read them. So that's good, because is that a thing? Apparently people feel the need that they have to read their books as well. And there are subtopics attached to each of these topics, making it circuitous. So another thing is, do you think you need to read like Rory to be well read? And being well read is a whole other topic in and of itself, and I will not get into that. So I did ask a question with some viewers. What do you consider being well read? Okay. So some of these books that were regurgitated on this hard, challenging list are Don Quixote, The Bleak House, Moby Dick, To the Lighthouse, Finnegan's Wake, Anna Karenina, War and Peace, Les Miserables, Ulysses, I think I have that up there, Infinite Jest, House of Leaves, do not get me started on that book, The Brothers Karamazov, Crime and Punishment, Atlas Shrugged, Canterbury Tales, Great Expectations, The Divine Comedy, The Sound and the Fury, Swan's Way, and Gravity's Rainbow and the Silmarillion, which the Silmarillion isn't even a book per se. It's apparently more of Tolkien's notes that were organized and put in a book form. Does that even count? Okay. So what I did was I looked up the Lexile level, and I will leave this information down below. It used to be that you could find a Lexile for a book without having to pay, but no, they want to be... I will just put all of the information down below. You'll figure it out. And Lexile level used to be better. Now there are certain things you have to pay for. No, I will leave information down below so that you don't have to pay for it, especially if you're a homeschooler. I looked up the Lexile levels for these books, and based on their levels, what do you think is the average grade level for these books? I think you'll be surprised. So you're probably thinking, what in the world does Lexile level even mean? If you did ask, I'm glad. So Lexile level is a reading range given for grade levels. It helps the parent or the teachers to know if a student is reading in their grade level. I'm going to check to see, list of books, how funny. If they're reading at their grade level. It's very helpful. So it considers grammars, the words used, how often certain words are used, how many syllables each word has, how often, how many syllables of the words used, the length of the sentences. So, there are some people, some authors that would have run-on sentences, the content, and a few other things. So I will leave text analyzers down below because that's how I had to look up information on some of these books because they were not listed in the Lexile. If you check a book, so I'm just going to grab a book here. Whatever book you're reading, randomly open it up, randomly pick a paragraph, or even a paragraph that you think is challenging. Type out that paragraph. Yes, I know typing. Type it out, and then it will give you the levels, and some of these text analyzers are amazing because they will give you the difference. So like 5 different text analyzers, not just a Lexile, and will also average it, which is fantastic. So I look at the average. What is the average of these hard books, okay? But if Lexile had it, then I included the Lexile. Okay, lovely little tool that. Now, my first thought was that the grade level or the Lexile level of the writing in these books was why these books were considered challenging, but when I looked them up, they were mostly middle grade level. This list that I read, this Bleak House, Les Mis, Crime and Punishment, Atlas Shrugged, Canterbury Tales, most of these books were middle grade. Why is middle grade considered challenging? I don't know. So I dug further. I'm not sure that I actually found an answer. If you guys know the answer, please let me know. And some of them were 9th grade. That's starting high school. Why is that considered challenging? Okay, so the more information that I gathered, the more confused I became, which made me dig even further. So, started looking at the average adult reading level. Do you know what the average adult reading level is in the United States? Or in your country? In your country, what is your average adult reading level? Have you guessed? Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Okay, ready? Ready? Do you have any idea? Yes, I looked it up. It claims, so based on the information I found, when I first looked it up, it said 5th grade. But then when I researched it again to find the information to include it in my notes, it said 8th grade. I'm not crazy. I saw what I saw. I know what I saw. But anyways, I'm going with the 8th grade. 8th grade? That's middle school. That's the average? Well, okay, it's better than 5th grade, am I right? Yes, it's better than 5th grade. With this information, I was curious about the illiteracy rates. In 2013, ages 16 and up, illiteracy was 4%. Do you know what it is now? In 2022, it was 14%. Of course, all of this is for the United States. Please look up the information in your country because I'm really curious to know what's going on. So 14%. In 2022, it went up to 21%. We are getting dumber. The illiteracy rate is increasing. So the Lexile level, oh, this is where I found the information for adults reading was below 5th grade. Lexile level was 830. And 19% of high school graduates cannot read. How is this possible? This is unacceptable. They should not be allowed to graduate if they cannot read. Yes, I am passionate about this. So according to the U.S. literacy stats, 6 out of 10 households do not buy a single book in a year. Yes, in a year. Redundant much? Okay. And 44% American adults do not read a single book in a year. And this seems redundant, but it's a quote. So I wrote it out how they had it. The Lexile, Lexile.com, again, I'll leave the information down below, says that research indicates that the materials college students and career seekers will first encounter will be a Lexile of 1,300. So if somebody graduates and they go apply for a job, they will have this job. The reading material that they will have to read will be a Lexile of about 1,300. How are they going to do at their job if their Lexile reading is 830? Is that what it said? 830. What? And if you go to college, you are expected to have a reading ability of 1,300. Lexile levels for college and career readiness, it should be 1,385, which is graduating 12th grade. And if you have students graduating 12th grade and they don't know how to read, they're going to feel like failures. It's not them. It's the schools. The schools have failed them. So which books are popular on BookTube? Yes, I did. Which grade level are those popular books? Do you want to guess? What do you guess? You know, the real big popular channels. What grade level are they reading at? And what grade level are the popular books? I didn't look at them. I just looked up the popular books. I don't know what their reading level is. Well, I did some more digging and watched many videos of favorite books and the polls, etc., looking up the Lexiles, the popular books on BookTubes. We're mostly middle grade. Yeah, middle grade level. And so what was your guess? Did you guess at all? Do you remember the average adult Lexile information mentioned at the beginning was middle grade level? And more specifically, 8th grade? I don't think it is. I think that's false information. So the only difference with the books the adults are reading is the adult content. Yeah, so this middle grade reading level bumps it up to young adult because of the deplorable content, because the content is not appropriate for the middle grade students. That's a whole other topic in and of itself, isn't it? Okay. I looked up a separate list of books that BookTube creators as well as viewers voted on, the books that they liked the most, and some of the books were elementary level, 3rd to 6th grade. I was shocked. I'm literally shocked by this. So doing even more thinking about this, and I wondered, are adults reading the elementary level books on a regular basis lazy? Or is that really their reading level? And then I started wondering, the authors are writing at this level. So how much can they be held responsible? But then are they just writing to this level so that their books will sell? Curious minds want to know. So can it also be argued that they are writing these books at a dumbed down level because they know that more books will sell? So not only are they selling to the adults, but they're also selling to middle grade readers. I don't know. Okay, so are readers so conditioned for quick access of information that the middle grade books are more appealing to them, more appetizing to them? Because, I think of books as food. Is it more appetizing to them because they want that snapshot of information like TikTok? They have to have everything quick, right? And they can't focus on something for more than 20 minutes or 5 or 3 or 1, because yes, that's how bad the attention span of adults has become. Is it a goldfish? Supposedly that's a myth. I don't know if that's true or not. You know that sometimes I think of certain books as cotton candy or palate cleansers. They're not horrible. It's just you shouldn't be consuming that only. There are better books. And if you're not using your brain is turning to mush. So what would you say that reading is a skill? I had this conversation with Prometheus, and we both agree that yes, it is a skill. And if you don't practice it, does it immediately go away? No. You still know how to read. I don't think you can forget how to read unless you have like brain trauma or something, right? But if you're not eating healthy, then your synapses aren't connecting. They're not firing up, right? So that has a lot to do with it as well. So if your brain isn't, firing up, then reading is going to be challenging. Thinking is going to be challenging. If you're reading a book that you consider hard and your mind is wandering, you might want to ask yourself why. Have you been eating right? Have you been getting enough sleep? And exercising. I won't get into the gut biome. But anyway, it's important that if you have children, you make sure they get enough sleep. You make sure they're eating a healthy diet. What are you doing for yourself? It's important. Yes, it is. Continuing down that line, you can strengthen your reading muscle. Is the brain considered a muscle? I don't know, but reading is a skill. And if you don't practice it and you don't challenge yourself, is it laziness? You make the call. I'm just doing the research here. How does a reader do this? How does a reader improve their reading skills? You practice. You practice, right? Booktubers know this. We know this. But not everybody does it. Why not? More people are doing it, which is why I went down this rabbit hole. Thank you very much for every booktuber that posted a video for I'm going to read these 10 challenging books. I love it. Thank you so much. Now, strengthening your muscle, you have to practice. This will improve comprehension, vocabulary, fluency, accuracy, your speed, the expression, and punctuation. So a lot of people don't know. What do you do when there's a comma? You pause. But do you need to pause while you're reading to yourself? No, you don't need to. I do want to talk more about the comprehension part of it, because if you understand a book you're reading, do you ever stop to think about, man, that book was way too easy. It didn't challenge me at all. Did I even learn anything from it? Or was it purely for entertainment? You know what? There's nothing wrong with that, right? Just not all the time. Am I wrong? I like challenging myself, and apparently there are a lot of booktubers that like challenging themselves too, and I challenge you to challenge yourself. Just like that book that I read, Read for Your Life. He challenges everyone that reads that book to read a book a week. I think it was that, right? Was a book a week? Do you understand the book that you just read? Can you decode unfamiliar vocabulary and use context clues to identify key features of the text? Now, I have heard that Dickens is guilty of this. He uses verbiage, vocabulary words that were more popular then than now. Would you dare say that the people in the Victorian era were smarter than we are today? I know there are a lot of college students that want to argue with me, but I did the research, and I think that they were. Even if people didn't read, their vocabulary was still big. There were still words that they used back then that we don't use today. There are a lot of archaic words that are being lost to the English language. Yes, they're still in the dictionary, but we're not using them. If you're able to figure out the word based on the other words in that paragraph, then you can figure out what is going on. That book might be considered challenging to you. When the words are familiar, then the reader can form the ideas and the assumptions and have discernment about the story, right? And where the story might be going. You're like, oh, I know this. Okay, I think this is where that character is going and this might happen. But you get to a word and then you're not quite sure what it means. Do you stop to look it up? Or do you notate it in any way, shape, or form? Or do you just keep reading and say, oh, I don't care about that word? But what if that word is important and it has something to do with the character later on, and you totally missed the point? You missed part of the story. When the words are familiar, then the reader can form ideas and assumptions and discern where the story might be going. What is the message for nonfiction or what might happen next for fictional books. With comprehension, the reader's retention is better. Obviously, right? It's not rocket science, people. If somebody has better comprehension of the vocabulary used, they're going to have better comprehension of the story. Then I went back to the list of the challenging books. Right here. There are 21 books. Yep, 21 books. And 13 of these books are below the college level. Remember, the beginning of college was listed as 1385. So this is below 12th grade level. I wasn't able to find the level of 5 of the books. I think there was 5, 1, 2, 3. Actually, I think I did find more information because I did the text analyzer. So I wasn't able to find them on Lexile, but I was able to text analyze them. Okay, so moving on. The books that I was not able to find, Don Quixote, Infinite Jest, and Sound and the Fury. But I did text analyzers. And so Don Quixote, the original was 1480. But if you think that's too challenging for you, there is an edition that is 910. So I would say, if you think Don Quixote is a challenging book, start with the one that's Lexile 910, and then move on to the one that's 1480, because you already know the story. You're halfway there. And then Finnegan's Wake I was not able to find, but I go into that more later as well. And then, what was the other one? Infinite Jest is possibly 1450, so 1450 Lexile. Based on what I've heard about this book, it's not necessarily hard or challenging. It's more that it's inconvenient, it's circuitous, and so the way that it was written is weird. Kind of like House of Leaves. House of Leaves is not a hard book to read. It's just written uniquely. That's all I'm going to say about that book. Moving on. The other one, Sound and the Fury, and that one is, I think the original was 1420, and there is an edition out there that is Lexile 800. Middle grade. You totally read a middle grade. And then again, read it at the middle grade level and then read the original. I absolutely love that so many readers are creating their own personal list of challenging books. I mentioned earlier, thank you so much for videotaping your list, because it gave me so many ideas and sent me down rabbit holes, and learning a lot about the condition of the schools here in America. Yes. And I had an idea because I had heard about schools in Baltimore. But I'm curious, do you know what level you read at? On average, like not without testing yourself. On average, what would you say your Lexile level is? I have an idea of where my Lexile level is based on the books that I read because I did the text analyzer. So, and then my next question is, do you challenge yourself? And then my third question is, are you an active reader or a passive reader? Now, I know a lot of people have commented on the book, How to Read a Book. I've started that book, I haven't finished it, and so I need to do that. I need to finish that book. Because reading is beneficial, and that's a whole other topic in itself, I have looked at books like food since I was in high school. And some of these books feed your brain, and some of them are cotton candy. So I'm asking you, what books are you reading, and what are you feeding your brain? Are you eating or reading a balanced meal? And how often do you read books that increase your brain function? Because I think it is important to challenge yourself. Sometimes they are necessary, but are they good if those are the only types of books you're reading? So for instance, the cotton candy, the puff romance or fluff murder mysteries, or the, you know what I'm talking about, the palate cleansers. Is that all you're reading? Why? Why not challenge yourself, right? If you read this, what is read, would you consider what is read more important than reading anything? Now this conversation came up for children reading Harry Potter. I have mentioned this in other videos. No, I don't think it is. I think what is being read is just as important, if not more so. than just reading. You can disagree with me if you want, by all means, have at it. So there are quick tests online that can give you an idea of what your reading level is. I did this for Prometheus all the time. A good rule of thumb for students to find a good reading level and to avoid the frustration, that's what I was trying to think of. So challenge yourself with a book, but don't frustrate yourself with a book. Work up to that book so that it's still challenging but not frustrating. So you can find a way to challenge them, the student, with the 5-finger rule. If they have a book and they're on a page and there are 5 words that are challenging, it's frustrating. Don't give them that book, even yourself, unless you like looking up all of those books. Now, I know that there was this author who wrote a book. I don't know the book. I don't remember the author. He apparently had written a book that was so frustrating for his readers that he was called out on it. And he admitted, I didn't write it for my readers. I wrote it for my contemporaries. I wrote it for my peers. I wrote it for other writers. Let that sit in. Let just think about that for a minute. If there are 5 errors on one page, then that book is going to be frustrating. Don't let the student read that book. And if there are 2 errors, then yes, that's probably the Lexile level that they are at, but bump it up to maybe 3 or 4. Like maybe let the student read that and then the next book make it a little bit more challenging. And if you're reading a book and there is another way to find out if the book is too hard, open it up to a random page, read the page, and if you find that there are 5 words that you don't understand, it's going to be too frustrating. Secondly, after having read this page, you have no idea what you read. Again, it's probably too challenging. I'm saying, don't give up. I recommend trying this process 2 more times on 2 other random pages. Okay, and if all 3 of these random pages result in it's too challenging, then move on to another book. Try a book that is easier and work up to that book. I know that if I'm going to start a book and I'm starting to come across words that I'm not familiar with, I will make sure that I have a book handy, a dictionary handy, so that I can look up other books, or I'll write a list. I prefer doing it straight away. That way I'm understanding the word in the context that the author wrote it in. Okay, if you can find the level of this challenging book that you are reading, it will be easier to find a book that is just slightly lower. So for instance, the books that I mentioned, with the Don Quixote book, I don't know what I did with my list. Okay, so the Don Quixote list. Original was $14.80, but there are editions out there that are $19.10, and I'm sure in between as well. Moby Dick is another book that was on this Lexile level. I do not understand why this book is on the challenging list. It's not hard. It's disgusting in places, but it's not hard. Okay, so Moby Dick has a Lexile level of 1230. If you find it challenging, I would say try War of the Worlds. War of the Worlds is the Lexile of 1160. If that is challenging, then I would recommend trying Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, because that Lexile is 1010. These are just examples to work up to this higher Lexile reading level. So if you have a book and you can't find it, what grade level it is, or you can't find the Lexile, then, like I said, I'll list the text analyzers in the description box so that you can find out for yourself. It's really fun. So how can you tackle your selection of challenging books? And I would say, number 1, how is your attention span? Because if your attention span is not great and you're already going into a book that you're not thrilled about, I would say maybe don't start with that book. Also, you can control your attention span. If you find that your mind is wandering, bring it into submission and put away the distraction. So I've heard, I don't even have my phone in here. Now, I have heard that the biggest distraction is the phone and social media. I would recommend deleting social media from your phone. Just a thought. Just a thought. If you find yourself addicted to your phone, I would just recommend maybe putting it in another room when you decide to read this challenging book that you have chosen. Okay, just a thought, just a suggestion, just throwing that out there. 2 things that you may not have thought about to improve reading is, and I mentioned this earlier, exercising and eating healthy. Who thinks about that? So if your mind is healthy, it makes reading and concentration easier, which means you are bringing your attention span into submission, and it's easier to do so when you have been exercising, when you are well rested, when you have eaten healthy. If you are having a hard time putting away distractions and concentrating, then I would just set aside a certain amount of time and start with that. So if you read meat and potato books, then you might need more time set aside than if you're reading cotton candy. You might be able to read 40 pages of cotton candy in an hour, and yet meat and potatoes book, you might read 17 pages in an hour. Are we going after quantity or quality? I'm just saying, it's a thing. It's real. It's real. Okay, same speed read, like still reading the same. If you are setting time aside to read, how much time do you normally set aside for your fluff books, we'll just say, or books that you find challenging? If you have chosen a book that's challenging, how much time do you set aside to read it? If it's only 15 minutes, that's not enough time. That's not enough time to read a challenging book. So I would recommend sitting with the challenging book for 30 minutes and then work your way up to an hour. Unless you find the book engaging, then start with an hour. Okay, so doing this, it's okay to take short breaks. It's okay to choose, if you have a book that's especially dense, do your 15 minutes, take a quick break, and then come back to it. That's totally acceptable. Nobody's telling you you have to sit for an hour and don't you dare move. Nobody's saying that about these questions. Okay, so when you read, what are you thinking about? Is your mind wandering it? Reel it back in, pull in those reins. If you're thinking about the book, what are you thinking about? Now, you probably already know this from the title, summary, or even reviews of the book you are reading. So a lot of the books that I've chosen, I have an idea what it's about, just based on the title. Or if you read or watch BookTube, if you watch BookTube and you heard about a book that they reviewed, that's probably why you picked it up. So you have an idea, and you can probably summarize the book in your own words. So for instance, The Professor and the Madman. I am able to summarize that book based on James's review of the book. And so if you can do that with a book that you've just read, then that book is not challenging to you, or maybe the words were, but the book wasn't. I digress. And why do you want to read the book? Do you really want to read it just because it's challenging? Yes, please. Yes. Okay. Did you think I was going to say no? And so why do you want to read the book? Or why did you want to read the book? So did you already finish it? So there were some books over here that I wanted to read because I had heard from somebody else about them, and she made them sound really good, and I realized that this author is just not for me. No, they weren't challenging. But that wasn't why I read them. But anyway. Okay, so what is it that you want to glean from the book? What is there to glean from Moby Dick? If you've never read Moby Dick, you might not know that there's kind of 2 things happening in that book. There's a fictional story, Call Me Ishmael. So you've got that going on in his massive obsession of a big white whale. Do not get me started. The big white whale. And there's also nonfiction. Now, I preferred the nonfiction part of the book and wished Melville had just written a whaling book. That, to me, would have been better. So you've got that dichotomy going on, right? So some people might enjoy the fictional story better. To each his own. So what do you want to glean from the book? If I had known that it was also a lot of nonfiction whaling, then that would have been like, yeah, I think I might want to read that. I remember going on whaling expeditions in San Diego. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Another question, is it just a pleasure book? I mean, your questions are going to be different if it's just a pleasure book. You might just want to be entertained. Do you want to be entertained? So again, or do you expect this book to teach you something? If I read a book, I want to learn something from it. So a lot of the history books. I don't want to learn the author's opinion. You can write that on your little footnote or preface or forward or in your endnotes or what have you, right? Not in the actual book. Okay. Do you want it to teach you something? Do you agree with the evidence or arguments or the supporting details? Yes, please. I like reading books I disagree with. I don't like hate reading. But I do like reading books that will challenge my beliefs, if you will, and give me your arguments and see if you hold water. Okay. It's okay to have deal breakers. So did the book go in a direction that you're not interested in? And this is kind of about DNFing, and I'll try and leave a card or a video down below of when to DNF or when to pursue. And you know what? If you're reading a book and you're finding it's too challenging, you might not want to continue with it. Just set it aside and come back to it later. Or it's not the book that you thought it was going to be, because Moby Dick went into some areas that I was not comfortable with. So these two situations, the deal breakers, find out what your deal breakers are. And it doesn't matter if it's on a list or that somebody else is reading it, or if it's inspiring or somebody else is aspiring to read it, or that they said that they enjoyed it, because not every reader is going to love every book. And even though I have a lot of similarities to other readers and other readers have similar reading tastes to mine, we're still not going to love the exact same books. Marion had just unhauled Middlemarch, and she liked it for the very reasons I didn't like it, but she unhauled it, and I soft DNF'd it. She got much farther in the book than I did, and so I'm wondering, now that she has shared with me what she didn't like, I'm wondering if I might actually like it, because apparently it goes into other storylines. I did soft DNF it, don't hate me. If you see somebody's list of challenging books and you think, yes, I have to read that because they're reading it and we love so many books, don't do that to yourself. Just don't. Try it. I mean, yeah, try it. I'm not going to tell anybody not to try it, but if it's not, it might not just be it might not be the time to read it, then maybe set it aside and come back to it. Give yourself grace, okay? Just, it might not be the time. I had to set David Copperfield aside, not because I wasn't enjoying it. Well, enjoying is not the right word. I love Dickens's writing because his word choice and descriptions are so vivid. I can see the picture in my mind, and I am a visual person. But David Copperfield's stepfather is a narcissist, and he reminds me of somebody, and I had to set that aside, and I had to give myself grace to not read it at that moment. Okay, so give yourself grace that, you know what, it might not be the time, it might not even be the book for you to ever read or finish. It's okay. There are so many books out there to read. So, you know, you might find out that you don't like the book at all. You tried it and you think it's kind of rubbish. That's okay too. I know this seems Captain Obvious, but a lot of people are afraid to DNF books. Some people think that they should finish or love a book just because it's considered a classic. Why? Who made that decision? There are a lot of classic books or books that are considered classics that are, in my opinion, rubbish. Okay, and there are a lot of booktubers participating right now in Garbage August. Thank you, August. Okay. I don't participate in it because I don't want to read garbage. I want to read books that feed me. Are you a passive reader? Are you rushing through the books just to say that you've read them? Because I know there are people that do that. There are people that read 300 books. I don't know how. 300 books a year. But what are they? I mean, I'm going to ask how? Maybe that's why so many people ask, how are you reading so many books? They don't ask me that. I can tell you that nobody has ever asked me, how do you read so many books? Because I'm not that person. How are you selecting your books? So if you're reading more, why are you reading more? Because that means you're a passive reader. What are you learning from these? I can only question why, but you do you. I don't care. I don't care one way or the other. But if you want to challenge yourself, then I would say why. Okay, question why. So I think that readers selecting books that they think will be challenging to them want to be active readers. They may already be active readers. Let's be honest. If you chose a list of challenging books, you're probably already an active reader. And I've seen the videos, I've seen the books, but very few of them have, given the why of the reason why they want to read these challenging books. So I'm just curious about that. What is the why of the books? Why they want to read these books? Why do you want to read these challenging books? Or why do you want to read these specific books? These books that are on a stupid list that somebody made. Who made this list? And it's just the same titles regurgitated. So who made these lists? And have they all... So just because they've heard that they're hard or challenging, or maybe they've tried to read them and then set it aside, again, check the Lexile level, setting them aside is important in knowing the why. Why do you want to read it, and why did you set it aside? And should that book be picked up again? Or maybe the stupid book was overhyped, like Catcher in the Rye, just saying. There's some Hemingway books as well, overhyped. I know. It's okay to hate a classic. There's nothing wrong. Fahrenheit police are not going to come after you yet. I'm just saying, hide your books. I have a lot of books to hide. Maybe it's an overhyped, long drawn out, fall flat on your face author's attempt at being pretentious, or worse. What's worse than being pretentious? I don't know. Anyways, maybe the author was just writing a book to sell. No. Do authors write thinking they want to write a book that will become a classic? I don't know. If you're a writer, let me know. So if they have asked why, if the reader, us, me, myself, if I have asked why I'm reading these books that I've chosen for my imaginary challenge list, I love that they're working hard at their reading muscle, but I'm going to ask, why do I want to read these particular books? Is it because so-and-so put it on their list? I can't do that. So all I can say is that it's more important to flex your muscles than it is to copy somebody else's reading list. And I'm really curious, do you know what your Lexile level is? Please leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. And please go test the text analyzer and look up any of the books on the Lexile level. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your local school is doing to the children. Bye.